and I am so excited to start today's conversation. As some of you may be aware, and some of you may not, food plays an incredibly important role in climate. So today I want to take you on a little bit of a journey and talk about how food impacts climate, but also how food can be a climate solution. Growing up, food was more about enjoyment than anything else. I looked forward to family dinners and get-togethers with family over favorite holiday meals. As I left my home country and traveled the world and lived in different places, I also realized that food plays an important role in our expression of culture. Who we are as people and our identity is very deeply rooted in food. This is how we communicate to the world who we are and who we're not, based a lot on what we eat. And over the last 10 years, I went on yet another journey, learning about food and health and how it plays a role in our health, as well as food and climate. And today I want to share a little bit with you about the intersection of food and climate, how what we eat today impacts the planet, and what we can do to make food a climate solution. So let's begin. Today we share the planet with 8 billion people. What do you think it takes to feed 8 billion people? How much land? How much water? What other resources are required to put meals on the table for 8 billion people every single day? I'm going to share some statistics with you that may be familiar to you, some of you in this room, and may be surprising to others. Some of you may know food actually represents about a quarter of global greenhouse gas emissions. It's quite a significant share. We use 50% of all habitable land on this planet today to grow food. We use 70% of our global freshwater resources for agriculture. And unfortunately today, the way we grow food contributes to nearly 80% of global ocean and freshwater pollution. Here's the kicker. 94% of global biomass of mammals is now made up of livestock. What does that mean? That means if I take all mammals on this planet, 94% of them are now chickens, cows, and pigs that we farm for food, and just 6% are wild animals. We are absolutely decimating ecosystems and are now living through the 6th mass extinction of wildlife on this planet, driven in large part by our food system. Pretty grim, right? Well, when you look at this, actually livestock plays a massive role in how food impacts the climate. Today, we use 77% of agricultural land just to graze and feed livestock. That adds up to the territory of about North America and South America combined, or 1/3 of our planet, to supply 18% of our calories. And in this country, unfortunately, the situation is even worse. We use 41% of the entire continental US to grow and feed livestock. This is for 300 million people in quite a large landmass. And what's more impactful is we use 65% more of our agricultural lands to grow crops for animals than we do to grow crops for people. In fact, we only use 4% of our country to grow crops that we consume directly. If the world ate an average US diet, we would actually need 178% of global land to supply the amount of food required. Clearly, we got out of Earth. And globally, when we look at this, 1/3 of global cropland is used for animal agriculture feedstock. Again, this for 18% of calories. And globally, livestock is the leading driver of deforestation. Those of you who care about deforestation in the Amazon, the #1 driver is cattle ranching and growing soy crops to feed the cattle. And just livestock alone, so all other emissions separated, represents 14 to 16% of our global greenhouse gas emissions. So this is a problem we must tackle if we are to address climate change. And as many of you know who work in oil and gas, methane is really powerful greenhouse gas, and it is literally the menace of the food system. Because if you look at methane emissions alone, livestock represents 33%, and the entire fossil fuel industry is 35%. So when we think about methane pledges that have been made last year to reduce methane emissions, it is absolutely impossible for us to get there without addressing livestock. And unfortunately, meat consumption continues to rise, dairy consumption continues to rise. We have an increasing global middle class that demands more of animal-based foods, more of that Western-style diet. You put the two together and you see where we really are on a collision course with nature, the way we do this. Pretty grim, right? So we must reduce animal product consumption. That has been the call from leading global environmental organizations. This would allow us to return a lot of that land back to nature. We can have reforestation projects, rewilding projects, etc. This would clean up a lot of those pollutions and a lot of that emission that goes into synthetic fertilizers on the impact of GMO crops and glyphosate, etc. really comes back to animal agriculture. So we can't keep doing what we're doing today. The problem is we love eating meat. We do, right? So what are we going to do? Because that is literally the biggest crux of the issue. Because if this was simply a mathematical or scientific exercise, we can probably work our way out of this. But we're dealing with humans, we're dealing with food, we're dealing with something that's deeply cultural, deeply emotional, and deeply personal. Good news is we have some solutions, so let's talk about those. There's kind of a toolkit of solutions. This is not totally exhaustive list, but those are the major buckets. We can all eat more plants. Plants are vastly more sustainable. They require significantly less resources and don't produce nearly the impacts as animal foods do. We can improve the efficiency of animal agriculture. I'm sure some of you in the agri-food tech space can tell you there are efforts to reduce the amount of pesticides, to improve animal genetics, to improve the feed, to potentially reduce some of the emissions associated with agriculture. Those are limited, just given the sheer biology of large mammals like cows that require a lot of feed, a lot of water, and a lot of resources. There is a movement to transition to regenerative agriculture, away from kind of currently extractive agricultural methods toward regenerative. Unfortunately, a lot of those actually require more land than less. So it's less efficiency, even though it is more sustainable. What I want to talk to you today is this interesting new technology evolving, and it is about making animal foods without the animals. So it is kind of a technological solution to the problem without seeking behavioral change. And the really cool thing about this is we really are just at the cusp of this technological revolution. And it is predicted to be the deepest, fastest, and the most consequential disruption in agricultural history since the days of industrialized agriculture. Pretty exciting. So let's talk about what those solutions are. There are three major pillars of technology. There's cellular agriculture, precision fermentation, and biomass fermentation. So let's dig a little bit into what are they. So under cellular agriculture pillar, we have cultivated meat and cell-cultured seafood. What does that mean? It means we're now able to take a tiny biopsy from an animal, chicken, cow, whatever, just a tiny prick. We can take those cells, and we now have the technology to be able to grow those cells inside a bioreactor, a giant steel tank full of nutrients, and get those cells to grow and proliferate. And it allows us to grow a steak, a chicken breast, a fish fillet, all without growing the rest of the animal. We don't need the beaks and the feathers and all of that other stuff. And it can be done at a fraction of the environmental footprint, because these bioreactors, these facilities, they don't require a whole lot of land to do so. It's pretty exciting. In fact, Good Meat, the company in the middle of the slide, has already produced cultivated chicken and has received regulatory approval for consumption in Singapore. So if you're lucky enough to be in Singapore, you might be able to go try the future food. The exciting part about this technology is that it is not a plant-based mimicker or replacement for meat. It is real meat. It is molecularly identical to meat. It has all of the same amino acid profiles and proteins, etc. and it can give you the exact same experience without needing to farm an animal. Pretty exciting stuff. So right now, in the US, the FDA and the USDA are also reviewing the safety applications from a number of companies, including Upside, which produces chicken, and Blue Nalu, which is looking to produce bluefin tuna. And it's possible that within the next year or two, you as well might be able to go and try some of the cultivated meat. Precision fermentation is the second pillar. And precision fermentation uses microorganisms. So think about yeast, microorganisms that can now be programmed using the latest biotechnology techniques to, instead of doing whatever they do when you brew beer, for example, and the yeast produces alcohol, we're now able to take those same microbes, copy the piece of DNA from the cow that codes for, say, milk protein, paste it into that microorganism, and when they are fermented under exact conditions, hence precision fermentation, they produce the said protein. So you've already been probably eating and trying this today, Impossible Food. This is how they make their heme protein that gives their burgers this bleeding color, texture, flavor. Perfect Day is a company out of the Bay Area. They already have whey protein, which is a milk protein in market today. You can buy it in the form of whey powder. They make an ice cream with it. They make cream cheese. They make yogurt. Pretty fun stuff. You get the nutrition of the dairy food and the texture and flavor of the dairy food without any animals involved in the process. Change Foods, a company where I work, is focused on making cheese. Because if any of you have tried plant-based cheese, there's quite a delta between what our expectations are and what it delivers today. And the key to that is casein protein. Casein protein is what makes cheese stretchy, melty, gooey, and kind of has that rubbery bite. And so you need to have that, and we're able to make it without any cows involved at all. And the third pillar is biomass fermentation. So this is also using microorganisms, but instead of using them as little machinery to crank out the protein of interest, the entire fermentation broth is used as a product. And by selecting the right organisms, they're non-GMO, they just happen to be in nature, a number of companies have been able to identify these incredible organisms that have high quality, high protein content, they're high in fiber, they're naturally high in vitamin B12 because microbes make B12, not cows, and other micronutrients. It's really exciting because now we can formulate these animal products that are high in nutrition and probably even superior in some cases in nutrition profile, and we could make sausages, we could make chicken, we could make beef prototypes out of them. So a number of these companies, Meaty Foods is already available for sale, corn has been in the market for a number of years, and Air Protein is scaling as we speak. So this is just about to hit the market. But this is business school, so let's talk about the money, right? The tech is cool, but now we're gonna make money on this. And the answer is yeah. Venture capital certainly believes it. To date, $12 billion have been invested in alternative protein space, $5 billion in the last year alone. Now this year is a little wonky, so it might not quite continue to skyrocket the same, but all of these eye-popping funding rounds are from 2022. And the potential of this industry is actually quite incredible. BCG did an analysis recently to where they estimate if we convert just 8% of total protein consumption, we could save 0.95 gigatons of CO2e worldwide within this decade. What does that mean? It's the same as decarbonizing 95% of the aviation sector. Those of you who work in energy know aviation is very, very hard to decarbonize. And I don't think any of us plan on not flying anytime soon. So we can try to do that, or we can convert just 8% of global protein consumption to any of these technologies. Pretty cool. And for those of you in the impact investment sector, the same analysis by BCG actually showed that the impact return on capital employed is 3 times greater in alternative proteins than it is in any other abatement investments. I know those of you in technology and in climate probably talk a lot about decarbonizing cement and transportation and all these other iron and steel, very hard to abate sectors. Well, there's a massive opportunity sitting here for investment dollars to do a lot of good. So how can you get involved? This sounds exciting, right? So there's 3 things I want to talk about. First is I invite you to learn more. What I told you today is just a sliver of the information out there. Good Food Institute is a nonprofit organization that spans across the entire alternative protein industry. They put a lot of reports, a lot of ways to learn and dig deeper into all of these technologies. Learn about which companies are doing what, how can you go and get involved. RethinkX is a really cool think tank out of Bay Area, I believe, that focuses on the theory of disruption. And they issued a report on food and agriculture and predicted that by 2030, 90% of global dairy will go bankrupt. Pretty interesting. If you believe it or not, it's up to you, but the report is worth reading because they're talking about compounding factors that may influence the transition in the global food systems. Our World in Data is another wonderful report to understand and look for great sources of information and data around food and climate. I do a lot of speaking and posting on social media, so please follow me if you're interested to learn more on LinkedIn and Twitter. I also have a column on Green Crew Media and Forbes. Now, I really hope that you guys are excited about this, and I hope that you're interested to get involved. So, point number 2 is how do you get involved? There are tons of jobs that are happening in this sector. There are 200 startups that are currently recruiting across various functions and levels within organizations. If you want to look for career in consulting, you can still be involved in this industry because just about every major consulting company is now developing internal competency within their shops to work and collaborate on food system sustainability. If you're into VC, there are actually dedicated venture capital funds who invest in nothing other than alternative proteins. So you can be an expert in that. And if you're looking for a large corporate option, just about every large food ingredient and product manufacturer is also getting involved in these technologies. So if you want to go and kind of participate in the system from inside a big organization, there's certainly plenty of opportunities to do that. And number 3, even if you do nothing else, I hope you realize you can be a climate hero for breakfast. Because simply by reducing your animal product consumption, you can actually have a massive improvement in your own climate footprint. And unlike other sectors where we're waiting on government action or big companies to do something, where a lot of us feel, don't feel empowered that we can make a change, we actually can make a massive change with what we eat, just given what I've shown you today. You don't have to go vegan, I promise you. But simply reducing your animal product consumption can do so much for the planet. It can also do a lot for market signaling. It could do a lot for shifting the culture and the conversation around food. So if you are willing to talk about it with your friends, please do, because I find that so many people are completely unaware of how food and climate are connected, and it is incredibly empowering to just share this knowledge with them and tell them about what they can do starting tomorrow. Thank you so much for having me, and enjoy the rest of the day.